the United States of Africa.
One army, one passport, a single diplomatic voice on the world stage.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at a geopolitical goal that is, it's so massive, so audacious, it almost sounds like science fiction.
Right.
A complete unification of 54 African nations into one single entity, the United States of Africa.
One army, one passport, a single diplomatic voice on the world stage. It's an extraordinary vision.
And the most urgent claim we're seeing in our source material, the thing that really grabs you, is that proponents are actively pushing to make this happen by 2026.
Which is just around the corner. And to understand it, we really have to go beyond the headlines. Our sources today are, well, they're all over the map.
Yeah, they really are.
We've got dense academic critiques looking at why this failed in the past, but also these incredibly passionate YouTube manifestos that are, laying out realities of late 2025.
So let's start at the beginning. Because this dream, it isn't new at all, is it?
Not in the slightest. It's rooted in that post-colonial energy of the 1960s, and the main voice, the loudest voice, was Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah.
Nkrumah's stance was just completely uncompromising. His motto was, Africa must unite or perish.
He wasn't talking about trade agreements.
No, not at all. He wanted immediate, total political union.
Yeah.
A single government, a single military, one currency, common citizenship. He was explicitly modeling it on the United States of America.
But that very urgency, that radicalism, it immediately created a huge split, a deep ideological divide around 1961 that you could argue set Africa's political course for the next 60 years.
So you had the Casablanca group on one side?
Right. The radicals. Ghana, Egypt, Mali. They were generally anti-Western, pro-socialist, and they were banging the drum for immediate political union. They thought any delay was just inviting the old colonial powers back in.
And on the other side?
The Monrovia Group. The pragmatists, we're talking about Nigeria, Senegal, Liberia, their whole thing was unity and diversity. They wanted cooperation, sure, but they prioritized national sovereignty above everything else.
So they were basically saying, let's slow down, let's take our time.
Exactly. And the thing is, they won. The Monrovia model won the day.
Wait, so the compromise that came out of this was what?
In 1963, they formed the Organization of African Unity, the OAU. But it was the pragmatist vision. It respected national borders, it respected sovereignty, it had no binding authority, no enforcement mechanism.
So it effectively killed the dream of a continental government, at least for then.
It postponed it indefinitely. Yeah.
Okay, so why did it fail back then? Our sources point to three really key factors. First, the colonial legacy itself.
Yes. This is so important. The entire economic infrastructure of these new nations was built to trade outward.
To London, to Paris.
To Lisbon, not inward, to their neighbors. The train lines went from a mine to a port, not from one capital to another, so it forced them to compete with each other instead of integrating.
And the second point, the new leaders were just trying to survive.
Absolutely. They inherited these incredibly fragile artificial states with, ethnic rivalries, secession movements. A president couldn't really think about a continental agenda when his immediate problem was stopping his own country from falling apart.
And the third factor, which comes up again and again in the sources, is foreign interference.
The sources are very clear here, claiming that powers like the CIA and MI6 actively worked to block Nkrumah's Unity project.
And they often link that interference to the 1966 coup that overthrew him.
They do.
Yeah.
The conclusion many draw from that is that a strong, unified Africa was seen then, and still seen now, as a direct threat to certain global interests.
Which brings us perfectly to the modern resurgence. Because the core belief now is so different. It's Africa's leaders cannot unite Africa, the people can.
It's a total shift from the top-down political approach to a bottom-up, grassroots economic movement.
And what's so fascinating is it seems to be driven by two distinct forces, the global black diaspora and professionals returning to the continent.
Let's look at one of the key movements, USA for Use Africa. It was founded by a man named Mark K. Wood back in '96.
And his inspiration was Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali. It's an amazing story. Apparently, Ali told Wood in 1987 that the one event he most wanted to see was a United States of Africa.
Because of his experience in Zaire.
Exactly. For the rumble in the jungle, the borders were effectively open for a month. Africans from all over the continent came together, and Ali saw this flicker of a shared continental identity. Wood basically took that on as his life's mission.
That's incredible. It suggests the power is in shared culture and economics, not necessarily in, bureaucracy.
And that's exactly what you see with the repatriation movement, like the Made in Africa project in Dakar, Senegal.
Dakar is hugely symbolic here, isn't it? As the point of return.
It is. It's the westernmost tip of the continent, a place where so many were taken from. But this is more than just symbolism. They are taking tangible economic action.
How so?
The project works on things like wholesale export, setting up fashion businesses run by repatriates. The idea is to help the diaspora touch ground by integrating them financially, building commerce that just completely bypasses the old colonial trade routes.
And we saw this play out in the United States of Africa, March, in Senegal.
Yeah, you had diaspora members marching with local youth from Senegal, Gambia, Mali, and their demand was for economic independence.
The quote from the sources was that the youth are sick and tired of the people that are colonizing us.
It's that raw emotion, that direct link back to the colonial legacy that Nkrumah was fighting against. And it's deeply personal, too. We have that story of someone from Newark, New Jersey.
Right, who found out they had Senegalese ancestry, moved there, and said they feel so like I'm at home, and that they plan to grow old and possibly die in Africa. That's a powerful driving force.
It's all about identity.
So this is where the rubber meets the road. Let's talk about the grand architectural vision. Channels like the Big Island Reporter Channel are putting a date on it, a declaration by 2026. What would that actually look like?
The changes they're proposing are just massive, especially on the economy. The number one goal is absolute sovereignty.
And that starts with currency.
It starts with a new African currency, one that is explicitly outside the petrodollar network.
Okay, let's just pause on that. Why is getting out of the petrodollar so critical?
Because if all your major commodities, oil, gold, cocoa, are traded in US dollars, your entire continent's economy is subject to US monetary policy, to their interest rates, and crucially, to their sanctions.
So creating a new currency is about reclaiming monetary independence.
It's about shielding yourself from external financial leverage. It's a huge high-stakes move, but it's completely foundational to the whole sovereignty argument.
And what about inside Africa, the domestic market?
One single market.
Yeah.
1.4 billion people. You eliminate all the borders, all the tariffs.
So Ghanaian cocoa can enter Nigeria with no tariffs.
Exactly. South African goods can move freely into Kenya. It ends that internal competition we talked about. It lowers prices for consumers. And it creates a trading bloc so huge that it has immense global bargaining power.
Okay, now defense and governance. The vision is for a unified military command.
Right. The idea is to contain conflicts like the tensions in Rwanda and the DRC internally, to have one foreign policy, one defense force.
And what about the foreign military bases that are currently on the continent?
The demand is their immediate removal. The sources argue these bases don't bring stability, they claim they are agents of interference, that they cause instability, and there are even controversial claims linking them to the spread of disease.
So a unified defense force is seen as the only way to guarantee peace without external influence.
That's the argument.
But the vision that feels like a real global game changer is this idea of Africa as the green superpower.
This is fascinating. It basically flips a historical disadvantage into a strategic advantage.
Because it was never fully industrialized.
Precisely. Africa can, in theory, leapfrog the entire fossil fuel era. The plan is to harness the massive solar array in the Sahara Desert to power the whole continent.
But the logistics of that, transmitting power from the Sahara all the way to, say, South Africa, that's a staggering technical challenge.
It's the defining hurdle. It requires a complete reinvention of the continent's infrastructure. They talk about using hydropower from the coastline and building solar-powered continental highways.
From Cairo to Cape Town.
And Accra to Mogadishu. And if they pull it off, the surplus green energy could be exported to Europe, to China, to India. It would give a U.S.-Africa just immense geopolitical leverage.
That is the grand vision. Now let's ground ourselves in the 2025 reality. Because the institutional progress is moving at a very different pace.
A much more incremental pace. On the African Union path, everything is guided by their Agenda 2063. The cornerstone is still the African Continental Free Trade Area, the ACFTA.
And that's about slowly reducing tariffs and consolidating markets.
Slowly but surely, yes. They're also taking steps toward financial autonomy. The AU has designated 2025 as the year of reparations to fund development, and they're trying to launch an African credit rating agency.
Why is that local credit agency so important?
Because right now, international agencies do the ratings, and many argue they're overly punitive. It makes it more expensive for African nations to borrow money. An African agency could offer a different perspective on risk.
And what about PPSS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System?
That's crucial. That's the mechanism designed to let countries trade with each other in their own local currencies, bypassing the US dollar and SWIFT.
Which, again, underpins that goal of monetary sovereignty.
Exactly. It's all connected. But while the AU is taking this slow, measured approach,
You've got this radical divergence happening in the Sahel.
a really critical development, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have all formally pulled out of ECOWAS, the West African bloc.
And they're not just leaving, they're forming their own thing.
They are actively pursuing a confederation. This is fast. It's political. They're talking a common biometric passport, a joint investment bank. This is a rejection of that old Monrovia model.
So while viral claims about Captain Traoré of Burkina Faso forming a single U.S.-Africa state have been debunked, he's still a major force for this kind of rapid Pan-Africanist consolidation.
A major force. His actions prioritize speed and regional unity over getting international approval.
And the geopolitical friction around all this remains intense. The sources are filled with claims that outside powers actively want fragmentation to better exploit Africa's minerals.
And you still hear that controversial claim about Muammar Gaddafi's assassination in 2011, that it was really about stopping African unity after he pledged $90 billion for the U.S.-Africa project.
And whether that specific claim is true or not, it speaks to the perceived risk.
Yeah.
The sources argue that if African nations combined their mineral wealth and their defense, it would fundamentally change the global balance of power.
It would. But the internal challenges are just as deep. You have issues like xenophobia, where Africans attack other Africans. You have deep tribal tensions.
Right. The activist Bono noted that you have to overcome these internal divisions first. You have to build that Pan-African identity before you could effectively push back against external exploitation.
And finally, there's the 2025 context of U.S. relations. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, is set to expire in September 2025.
Which could be a massive economic shock.
Yeah.
That act gives duty-free access to the U.S. market for a lot of countries.
It does. And on top of that, the U.S. is reportedly considering expanding travel bans to nearly 40 African countries. So at a time when they're trying to unite, mobility and trade are facing major hurdles.
So what does this all mean for you? The tension is just, it couldn't be clearer. You've got this bold 2026 vision of a green superpower on one hand.
And on the other, the complex reality of slow institutional progress, radical regional splits, and these deep-seated challenges, both inside and out.
The core takeaway here is that whether they ever form a 54-nation federation or not, the movement is fundamentally about self-determination. It's about reclaiming economic control.
It's about demanding local control over mines, taking back land, moving beyond foreign aid. It's less about changing the flags and more about changing the entire culture of governance toward accountability.
The advocates aren't just trying to redraw a map, they're trying to redefine what African power means in the 21st century.
Enforcing the idea that Africa's resources must, first and foremost, benefit Africans.
Kwame Nkrumah said, Africa must unite or perish. So given this new wave of powerful regional blocs like the AES and the focus of external powers on these fragmented states, we have to ask you, is that ultimate goal, a single United States of Africa, even achievable anymore?
Or could it be that Africa will find its true power not in merging 54 flags into one, but in making sure these regional collaborations, these economic blocs become so strong, so cohesive, that they can achieve sovereignty on their own terms, without ever sacrificing that deep-seated national diversity? That's the choice that will define the continent's future.